Good morning and thank you for joining us. It is the Daybreak on BTV News. Do remember to engage with us on social media. Use the hashtag #TheDaybreak on BTV News. And it's time for our business segment. And this morning we're talking about the Botswana Stock Exchange Chief Executive Officer, Thapelo Tsheole, who has put Botswana on the continental map after being elected president of the African Securities Exchanges Association, that is the Asea, at the executive committee meeting that was held in Abidjan, Cote d'Ivoire last week. Now, Tsheole takes over the presidency from Dr. Edo Kosi Amenonve, CEO of the RVM. The vice president of Asea is Celestine Rabukumba, the CEO of Rwanda Stock Exchange, who was elected at the same meeting. Now, established in 1993, as of 2022, Asea comprises of 6 associate members and 28 full members, serving 38 countries. More than 1,100 companies are listed on its member exchanges, with a total market capitalization of $2 trillion. Asea aims to develop member exchanges and to provide a platform for networking and cooperation on areas of mutual importance. Now, in studio this morning, we have the man of the moment himself, Thapelo Tsheole. Good morning, sir. Congratulations, and thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you, Hana. Good morning.
I think let's start by maybe unpacking the mandate of Asea. What is Asea, and what have been the milestones since its establishment?
Yeah, Asea is a group of stock exchanges in Africa, 28 stock exchanges, serving 54 countries. 54 countries because some stock exchanges serve a number of countries. It was formed in order to advocate for the operating environment of stock exchanges in Africa, and also for economic development of respective countries, because the role that stock exchanges play in economic development is very important. It's a place where companies raise capital, and then when companies raise capital, they're able to deploy that capital to expand as companies, and when companies expand, there's employment creation, there's production of goods, the GDP goes up, and therefore Asea, as a group of stock exchanges, came together and formed this association back then, and there have been a lot of successes. The first one that I'm thinking of is that back then there were very few stock exchanges in Africa, so Asea helped a number of countries who did not have stock exchanges to establish stock exchanges. And it is still doing that with some other countries to help them establish their stock exchanges. Asea also set some standards in terms of generally international standards, which needs to be conformed to by stock exchanges in respective countries. And therefore, we are able to bring market confidence in the trading and settlement of shares, because you know what is the best practice according to Asea. Also, the recent other very important project is the linkages project, which we call the Africa Exchanges Linkages Project. It's going to start off with 7 exchanges and then 9 exchanges, big exchanges in Africa, and Botswana Stock Exchange is one of them. What this project basically does, and it was also launched at the annual general meeting of the executive committee we have just attended. What the project basically does is that it's going to give opportunities for people in one African country using their own local broker to be buying shares in another country. Let me say you are in Botswana, you want Dangote shares, Safaricom shares, or whatever company in another country, either in Nigeria and what. You go to a local broker in Botswana and say, I want 10 Dangote shares, and then the broker will place your order in the Nigerian market. Somebody in Nigeria can be able to buy Choppies, can be able to buy PTCL by doing the same thing. They go to their local broker in Nigeria, who will then place their order in the Botswana market. This opens up a huge potential for the Botswana market and also for intra-Africa trade.
Absolutely. Is this something that has effected immediately, or is it something that Asea is working on implementing?
This project has been on the planning phase and been developed for the past 7 years. And it was launched on the 7th of December. We had the first trade, somebody in Cote d'Ivoire buying shares in Kenya. And therefore, it is something that is live. But that is the first phase. So as the BSE, we decided to join on the second phase, which is going to be early next year. We have already been admitted, mainly because we wanted to be sure of the infrastructure development that we needed to put in place, which we did this September.
Okay. Now, would you say you were an obvious choice of presidency as you've been vice president of Asea over the last 2 years?
It was obvious, but not very obvious, because I think there was likelihood to be myself against a Nigerian, but he pulled out. Fortunately or unfortunately, but then I think I was voted by consensus. But on the vice presidency side, it was it's Rwanda versus Ghana, and then Rwanda, I think, was voted into the committee.
And what should we expect, from your presidency? What does this position entail, and what is the expectation from you?
Yeah, I think in terms of expectation, I think mainly for the BSE and for Botswana, I think it unlocks a lot of huge opportunities. I mean, this is a position or an organization that a lot of decisions are made. And obviously, when you are sitting there as a Botswana from Botswana, you can actually see that there are decisions that are beneficial to a lot of other countries, especially the guys who have been in this committee. They have benefited a lot. And also, I think I was deputy before, and I think there are instances where I can say we have benefited. We listed the first African Development Bank fund in Botswana when I was still vice president. And it's about influence. Is because when the opportunities are presented, you are there, and also because decisions are made there. And therefore, to be in charge of an organization that is worth about 2 trillion, because the 1.5 trillion is actually the ones that are the African Linkages project. But the size of the African market is about 2 trillion, and we have about 2,000 companies. I can tell you, the day I was elected, I mean, I got more than 15 conference invitations. Around
Instantly.
The world. Instantly. Yeah. You know, I got about 5 or 7 meetings of people wanting to consider Botswana as a market. Instantly, I mean, within 24 hours. The number of LinkedIn profile, fortunately, or unfortunately, I'm not on social media. LinkedIn profile went up by almost more than 1,000 in the first 5 hours of election. So you can see it's a huge network, and I'm talking about very credible people in the financial services, global people, and a lot of them, I think they can be able to offer Botswana Stock Exchange and this country a lot of services, especially at a time where I think government is working so hard to attract a lot of investors. So I think we are sitting at a prime position to, in one or the other, help government or help the country to expand its financial services.
Let's bring the conversation back home now and talk about, the BSE within or during the COVID-19 pandemic. How much was the BSE, affected, and what would you say? Would you say you have recovered since the pandemic?
I think we have recovered since the pandemic, just like every other stock exchange. We're greatly affected by COVID. The levels of activity in the market went down. The general indication of share prices went down. But I think we came up after COVID very strong, both as a company, because BSE now is a company, is registered as a company. In terms of profitability of the company, of the BSE, it's higher than ever in the history of BSE at present. The level of turnover, of course, is not at historically high, because the share market takes some time to really recover in terms of activities, especially when the prices are not high. But when you look at the indication of the performance of the market, and you look at what we call the total return index, which is basically the general rise in prices of shares, plus the dividend payout that are paid to investors, people who have invested in the stock market, I think we are hovering in more than 10% now, which is one of the greatest performance, I think, in the recent years, especially in the last 4 or 5 years.
And what would you credit that to? What is it that got you to where you are right now, especially as far as recovery is concerned?
Yeah, I think, look, from 2017 up to 2021, we had a very clear strategic plan. We have started our new strategic plan as the BSE, and I think if you look at our performance rated by an independent consultant to rate our performance in the last strategic plan, we achieved 91% performance in terms of the strategic plans. We have been able to lay down a very strong foundation that propelled us to be where we are. And of course, I think, credit to my staff. I've got a dedicated of 23 young, educated, very hardworking and committed staff member. I think we are able to build ourselves as a very strong team at the BSE, and of course supported by our board, because I mean, as the CEO, I can't achieve without a board, and I can't achieve without the staff. So I think we have been able to build down a very strong foundation that I think even in the coming years, we see a lot of prospects that are coming up in such big moments than we have ever seen before.
Speaking of big moments, what are some of the BSC highlights from the year 2022? I know you've already touched on a few. I have mine that I'd like to also single out as some great initiatives that I've seen coming out from the BSC.
Yeah, I think some of the greatest initiatives, I will try as much as possible to be less technical. Some of the greatest initiatives is the introduction and the launch of our new settlement system. So when you trade shares, what actually happens on the background is that there's a system that checks whether you have shares, how many shares do you have, how many shares are you selling, and then there's exchange of money and shares. That's what the CSD system does. We call it Central Depository Depository System. And this system also is a database for all the investors that we have. We had the old system from 2008, and because of the improvement in terms of technology, we introduced the new one in 2023, launched in 2022, launched in 23 September 2022. And over and above the introduction of that system, we became a member of SWIFT. SWIFT is an international secure communication and payment platform. We're able to join SWIFT. It's an American platform, which puts us more into more secure environment and international space. And most importantly, we are also able to settle through central bank money, which is what a lot of, especially foreign investors, want. Ordinarily, it took us a lot of time to do this, but I think we achieved this. And also, we've upgraded our automated trading system. So all the three systems were simultaneously implemented over the past 2 to 3 years, but they were launched in 23rd September 2022. And over and above that, I think we are going to be listing the first commercial paper in the history of BSC. There was one previously before, but I think it's going to be launched tomorrow. That's one of some of the achievements that we have been able to do last year, mainly, over and above a lot of others.
A whole lot of others. So that is something that we can look forward to tomorrow. The announcement, yes. I would like to believe, will be made tomorrow.
Yes.
So one of the things that, we saw as an initiative that was introduced towards, I think maybe around 2017, 18, 19, was the monthly bell ringing ceremony. Yes. Was that affected by the COVID-19 pandemic? I remember almost seeing it happening virtually. How are we doing with that? Is it back on, is it back as a physical, event as well? And what is the significance of it?
Yeah, the opening bell, we started it just before COVID, and then we still continue during COVID. It's only that we reduced the frequency of how it happened. We did it 2 months instead of 1 month, and also we changed the mode in which we did, because we did it virtually. But we are back now in terms of the physical ringing of the bell. The official bell ringing signals the opening of the market on that particular day. And it's also an instrument that we use to teach a lot of, especially Botswana, about the stock market. And we also use that opportunity to let companies that are listed on the stock exchange to actually take out their services to their potential investors and to their present investors. So we'll continue with it even into the next year.
A great initiative that I like also from the BSC is the TPD initiative. I think this is for companies that have potential to eventually list on the stock exchange. So maybe just get us into that. How is TPD doing? I remember just seeing about 2 months ago the graduation of your, the beneficiaries of the TPD program. So maybe just get us into that.
Yeah, the TPD mentorship program we started in 2019 as an initiative of the stock exchange to look mainly at small and medium enterprise companies. The idea here is that we know a lot of African countries, especially in Botswana, the economies are dominated by small, medium enterprises. And therefore, what we want to do is that we are creating a pipeline of listings for future. We are taking these companies, we are asking them to corporatize, or we teach them how to be like corporate entities, and then we teach them about the benefits of listing. We started with about 20 companies. During COVID, we reduced to 13. And then this year we graduated about 21 companies. And I think majority of these companies are actually have taken shape, and we should be seeing a listing in the next year or two of a TPD mentorship program graduate.
Well, that would be a great, milestone. Now, how do companies become part of the CPD mentorship program? Is it through showing interest, some kind of registration that goes on, or do you select companies that you feel have the potential to eventually list on the stock exchange?
Ordinarily, what we normally do is that on every CPD mentorship program is that we normally flight an advert in the media to say companies that might be interested in joining CPD must apply, and then we tell them what to submit, and then what we are looking for. And then after that, because of space, we normally limit the number to 20 based on different sectors, because we don't want to be taking only the same sectors. We look at different sectors. We also look at the stage of development of each company, and then that's when we admit them. Ordinarily, we receive more than 100 companies, but we now end up streaming to 20. But some of the companies that didn't qualify in 2019, in 2021, they qualified. And a lot of other companies from CPD mentorship program have gone so much tremendous transformation, because I personally take time to physically visit the operations of some of the companies in the CPD program.
So you offer mentorship,
yes,
in your personal capacity as
yes,
well as the CEO of the BSE.
Yes.
Now, one of the things that I know the BSE is big on is corporate social responsibility. Let's talk about some of your initiatives within, that regard.
Yeah, mainly on corporate social responsibility, we look at education and health. We are big on adopt a school. We adopted a school in Southern District called Gangwe. We found the pass rate to about 40%. We worked with them. By the time we ended our 3-year relationship with them, the pass rate was about 88%. And then on the next slot now, which is from last year, we took 2 schools, one primary school in Metsimanso, in Khanzi district, and another one called Karing, and I think it's in Northwest district. These are the 2 schools that we actually have adopted. What do we do during our adoption? We look at the needs of the school in terms of the IT needs. We give these 2 schools computers, we give them printers, we give them photocopiers, and we also give them a lot of stationery. And also we do interaction with students. At the beginning of the year, we agree on several prize giving initiatives, so that students during the year, they know that at the end of the year, when they do well, they need to get a prize. And we also physically visit the schools like 4 times in a year.
Now, let's just share a little insight on listing of companies, what qualifies a company to list. You just mentioned, some of the companies that had qualified for TPD, some didn't qualify. So on the greater scheme of things, what goes into a company listing? What qualifies a company to list? And I think another thing is we've seen, cases where companies had to be delisted. What then does a company need to do to maintain its listing on the BSE?
Yeah, when you look at the aspect of listing at the BSE, you'll realize that there are different sections of listing. There's what we call the main board. That is where big companies are mainly at. In order for a company to get to the main board, it needs to have operated for a certain period of time, made a certain minimum profit, have audited accounts. And also need to have a minimum number of investors at a particular point in time. That is where you get to the main board. And then we have the venture capital board, which is mainly the startup board. The startup board does not require any history. It just depends in terms of what you want to, how much you want to raise as a company. You just come and register with us. We want you to be a registered company, to be having directors, and to having some of the controls into place. And then by so doing, we don't necessarily require any profit history with you. We don't necessarily require you to have been operating over some time. And then you ultimately list on the venture board. But most of the companies that ultimately list on the venture board, they end up migrating to the main board because it's just a venture, it's a startup. And then we have the OTC board where BBS is listed. BBS is not fully listed in the exchange. It can't raise capital, but it only facilitates the trading of shares of BBS shareholders. But ultimately, our aim is to take it to the main board. And then we have the TPD mentorship or the TPD board. The TPD board is purely for small and medium enterprises. People who are starting up their businesses have been slow. They have got and argued to grow their businesses. And in terms of delistings, you can delist because of various reasons. Some of the recent delistings that we have seen is that some of these companies were bought up by other companies. You have people who have money, they see a listed company, they see potential in it, so they buy all the shares in this particular company. And therefore, after they buy all these shares, they take it out and make it a private company. They can still come and list it again at some point in time. The other form of delisting is because mainly some other companies will have broken the rules of the exchange. If you do that, like we do with suspensions, we have the power or the authority as the exchange to delist you. And therefore, for you to survive the listing or to maintain listing, there are certain obligations that we call continuing obligations that listed entities need to do. They need to produce annual reports, they need to produce audited accounts, they need to make announcement to the shareholders. Those who make money, they need to pay dividends to the shareholders. So that is generally the principles under continuing listing obligations.
Now, Mr. Tsheole, I think would really like to get your take on the blockchain world as well as cryptocurrencies. This is a new movement that we're seeing. What would your advice be to the general public as far as, participating in this blockchain world? And could it possibly present as a threat to, traditional stock exchanges as they currently exist?
Yes. Blockchains, cryptocurrencies are alternative investment assets. I mean, we call them alternative because you have a choice as an individual either to take your money to the stock exchange or to take your money to the cryptocurrencies. But the tricky thing is that they are very complicated instruments. You really need to understand them. You really need to take your time to understand them. It's because it's finance instrument. I understand them. I know how complicated they are. I know how they function. But the risk levels, roughly compared to the stock exchange, is also very high. That is why some of them are genuine, some of them also are not really genuine. And therefore, I think I wouldn't say they're a threat. I'll say they are competing assets, just like as we compete with bank deposit as stock exchanges. And therefore, my advice to investors is that, I mean, it's kind of very nice to say I invested in cryptocurrency or blockchain because you will sound very complicated. But if you don't understand, you stand the possibility to lose all your money, and all your lifetime savings. So they are genuine assets, but you just need to understand them. You just need to understand the regulation, and you just need to understand the risks like any other investment.
Now, as we wrap up, Mr. Tsheole, I think behind every successful organization is a great leader, and I would like to believe you are that. Now, what would you say has contributed, or what is the secret to your success as a leader? What is your leadership model? You spoke about your team earlier, but I just want you to expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, look, I've been CEO for 7 years now at the BSE. I have had a great time at the BSE. And I think I've been able to put together as a leader a team that I'll work with. At the BSE, we set objectives based on the strategy that have been approved by the board. On every year basis, and we evaluate the performance of every member of staff adequately to ensure that every member of staff go to work knowing what they are going to work to do, what they need to achieve. So our objectives in terms of as an organization are very clear. That is why we have a very hard-working team, because they're hard-working because they know what is expected out of them, and they know what is it that they need to do when they get to work.
Mr. Tsheole, thank you very much for taking time out to talk to us this morning, as well as to just shed light on the Botswana Stock Exchange, its achievements, its milestones, as well as what we can expect going forward. Thank you very much for your time, and once again, congratulations on being elected as president of Asea.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. And with that, we come to the end of our business segment this morning. Right on the other side of this is the news at 8 o'clock.